As you mentioned, Mr. President, the coalition has provided Russia and Turkey with an initial list of 339 children to be brought home today. But this is just the beginning. There are thousands more children who've been illegally abducted, who've endured these horrors, who must return home. And as co-chair, Canada will intensify our work with Ukraine, with our European partners and the United States to secure the immediate unconditional return of Ukrainian children. We're investing millions in a HALAS system to support the use of AI in locating and identifying Ukrainian children who've been unlawfully deported.
Canada just walked into the UN and spoke like a country that finally realized its weight on the world stage. Mark Carney didn't come across as another polite diplomat reading from cue cards. He came in like a statesman who knew exactly what message to send, that Canada isn't sitting on the sidelines anymore.
It's an honor to be here. It's a tragedy that we must gather together. And it's a tragedy that we're all committed to reverse. You know, Mr. President, when I joined you a few weeks ago on Independence Day in Sophia Square, I emphasized that your struggle is our struggle. Your cause of freedom, democracy, sovereignty, and the human rights and dignity of every person, particularly children, is our cause, the cause of the 42 nations and more organizations gathered here today. I want to be clear at the outset of who's responsible for these horrors. Putin has caused this terrible tragedy that has claimed in the war lives of millions. He menaces the skies of Ukraine, threatens the cities, destroys the field. Putin has stolen Ukrainian children. Thousands of children have been abducted by Russia. Russia has repeatedly targeted the most vulnerable groups of children, including orphans, children with disabilities, children from poor families. Russian soldiers have entered classrooms and forcibly rounded up children, taking them to Russian schools and orphanages. To lose a child is every parent's nightmare. For the people of Ukraine, it's a horrifying reality. Après avoir bombardé une ville,
They bombed cities and children in Ukraine. They bombed Mariupol. Russian soldiers announced evacuations and brought civilians and children to occupied cities occupied by Russia.
Office has reported on these tactics, the tactics including to indoctrinate Ukrainian children. Children are being falsely labeled with Russian citizenship and passports. A decree to fast-track citizenship, the citizenship process for abducted children, has been signed by Putin himself. In the Russian school system, abducted Ukrainian children are exposed to war propaganda and given military patriotic training. Secondary schools are required to send lists of students aged 18 or older for conscription in the Russian armed forces. Each of these inhumane acts are violations of international law. And the 42 members of the International Coalition for the Return of Ukrainian Children are united in our mission. We're committed to the safe return of Ukrainian children, that this must be part of any negotiated settlement. As you mentioned, Mr. President, the coalition has provided Russia and Turkey with an initial list of 339 children to be brought home today. But this is just the beginning. There are thousands more children who've been illegally abducted, who've endured these horrors, who must return home. And as co-chair, Canada will intensify our work with Ukraine, with our European partners and the United States to secure the immediate unconditional return of Ukrainian children. We're investing millions in a HALAS system to support the use of AI in locating and identifying Ukrainian children who've been unlawfully deported. We welcome the recent powerful appeal to President Putin by the First Lady of the United States to consider the plight of children in ending this war. You know, decades ago, a U.S. president led a peace effort with Russia through nuclear disarmament and Reagan adopted the slogan, "Trust but verify." It couldn't be more different, Vladimir Putin and Mikhail Gorbachev. When peace comes, we can't trust but verify. We must deter and fortify. We must start to drive that peace with the sanctions you mentioned. Canada has sanctioned over 300 enablers of the Russian regime, over 3,000 individuals. We stand ready to reinforce those sanctions further with our European partners. And I welcome the President of the United States' call today, repeated today, for secondary sanctions on Russia. Russia must be deterred, I'll finish with this, from ever thinking that they can threaten Ukraine's or Europe's freedom again. We have to fortify Ukraine's forces that have fought so valiantly and for so long. And by marshalling the strength of the coalition of the willing, President Stubb, I salute your leadership in that, dear Alex, we can help secure a durable peace. But that peace is only truly peace with the reunification of children with their family, with their homeland, and we will not rest until that happens. Slava Ukraine.
And then came Diana, Canada's First Lady, who turned what could have been a routine closing statement into something emotional and raw. She didn't talk like a politician's spouse reading notes. She spoke like a mother who couldn't look away.
Canada has proudly stood with Ukraine since the beginning of Russia's illegal invasion. Our country is home to 1.4 million people of Ukrainian descent. Canada and Ukraine are deeply connected. As my husband said in Sofia Square on Ukrainian Independence Day, your fight is our fight, your struggle is our cause, and your independence will be our victory. Canada will always stand in solidarity with Ukraine. As we have heard, in this war, Putin has targeted some of the most vulnerable populations. It is incomprehensible what the thousands of abducted Ukrainian children and their families are living through. As a mother, I simply cannot fathom the horror. What these children have endured is more than unjust, it is inhumane. I want to share with you the story of Ilya. At age 9, in the Russian shelling of Mariupol, Ilya saw his home destroyed and his mother killed before his eyes. He suffered injuries from the attack, and Russian soldiers took him to the Russian-occupied Donetsk. Doctors performed an operation to remove a fragment from his leg with no anesthesia. Ilya describes these doctors trying to turn him into a propaganda tool, telling him he must no longer say, "Glory to Ukraine," but instead, "Glory to Ukraine as part of Russia." No one in Ilya's family knew where he was. He was 9 years old, alone. Ilya's grandmother learned of his location only because she saw him in a Russian Federation video of the hospital. With her relentless determination, she secured his return. But the suffering that he endured cannot be undone. As his grandmother describes, he had a school, he had a home, he had a mother, and he lost all of that, his entire childhood. His story is the cost of this war, and tragically, as we have heard, his story is not unique. It is the story of thousands of Ukrainian children. It is what brings us here today. This is the tragedy and the mission that unites us all. I, too, would like to commend First Lady Melania Trump for addressing the return of Ukrainian children directly to Vladimir Putin in a letter hand-delivered by President Trump. Putin must understand that we know of his barbaric campaign of abducting children to indoctrinate them, forcing them into Russian schools where they must undergo military training, subjecting them to war propaganda, and attempting to erase their Ukrainian identity by forcing them to take Russian citizenship. They are not Russians. They are proud Ukrainian children, children who must be reunited with their families. For Canada, true peace requires security guarantees for Ukraine, and there is no peace without the return of these children. We will never erase the pain they have faced, but we can bring them home. Together with our allies, Canada will never relent from this mission until it is complete. Thank you. Merci.
Her story about Ilya The 9-year-old boy who watched his mother die and was later used as Russian propaganda made every word of Carney's earlier remarks feel real. She called out Putin by name, saying those children are not Russians but proud Ukrainians who deserve to be home. It wasn't diplomatic language, it was personal, and that made it powerful. Between Carney's hard facts and Diana's emotional truth, Canada positioned itself as the conscience of the coalition. The message was simple: peace without justice means nothing, and in their version of peace, every stolen child must return home.